Welcome to Golf Industry Guru and the Gig Podcast, where we interview the best and brightest golf and hospitality leaders on the planet. On today's episode, you will learn some proven real-world solutions that'll help you and your team solve some of your biggest golf business challenges. So stick around for some tips, tools, and training to get you, your people, and your business powered on. Here's your host, James Cronk.
Well, hello, Gig Nation, and might I also say g'day, because we have got a theme in today's Golf Industry Guru podcast, and I am excited. I was very, very fortunate a month or so ago to go down under and to visit a fellow Canadian and the Club Managers Association of Australia, speak at their conference. I met so many wonderful Australians that I felt like I was in Canada because we have such a similar sense of humor and everything else. And in addition to that, learned about some fantastic initiatives and some fantastic programs that's happening, including the announcement that just came out on August the 23rd from Jeff Calderwood, of course, COO of the NGCOA Canada, talking about a partnership with EnvoyGolf and also with Fresh Golf Solutions. And so we are very lucky today to have Dave Burton from EnvoyGolf and Scott Kolb from Fresh Golf Solutions. And gentlemen, welcome to the Gig Podcast.
Well, thank you, James. It's lovely to talk to you all the way from Sydney, and it was great to have you over at the conference, in particular, sharing your world knowledge, and most importantly, thanks for what Gig has brought to Aussie managers. I wish Gig was around when I was the GM at New South Wales Golf Club, but thanks for having me, and nice to spend time with you and Scott.
Yeah, thank you. And Scott, it's you're a stone's throw away from Gig headquarters a little bit, but welcome to the Gig podcast and also to your new adventure with Fresh Golf Solutions.
Thank you very much. And, James, you and I sort of grew up together as golf professionals way back when. And as you mentioned, we got a little bit of water in between us on an island living over here in Victoria, but excited about the direction things are going. And like you said, Jeff Calderwood's announcement, great collaboration amongst, two countries now and the different associations. And that's exciting for me to get the collaborations to make things work. And I think this project and its magnitude needs it. So excited and happy to talk some more.
Well, that's great. And before we kind of start talking about solutions, I would love to just kind of talk about the challenge, because the reality is that what I think this collaboration is doing between yourselves and between, in this example, Canada and Australia. But I know, Dave, you're going to tell us some other countries that this exercise is in. But really, it's to address a challenge that's facing golf courses throughout the world. And so, Dave, you mentioned about being a club manager for many, many years in New South Wales, in Sydney, Australia. And certainly you get a chance to travel around and talk to club managers all over the place. And really, I guess this is a solution. So let's talk about the challenge first and what's going on from an agronomy standpoint in finding and retaining and attracting staff.
Yeah, thanks, James. Look, I've traveled the world, and, a lot of this has sprung out of COVID, because COVID created a catalyst for, a lot more activity in golf, probably over 25% increase in the number of rounds. So it's spread the existing staff. When COVID actually was at its worst, clubhouses were closed. So, you had hospitality staff who would pivot and decide to do something else, and they haven't come back. It's a good time for golf clubs, but it's a terrible time for labor. And I see that in just about every country that we're working with at the moment. You were part of a presentation, I know, with Jeff Blunden with Golf Business Advisory Services at the conference that talked about, nearly 90% of clubs reported F&B shortages, and over 80% of clubs reported course staff shortages. So it's a bit of an epidemic in its own right. And there are a lot of other problems. I mean, when it comes to agronomy, the younger generations are not as enthusiastic about, working outdoors as they used to be. A past colleague of mine who was the superintendent at New South Wales Golf Club for 29 years, Gary Dempsey, works with the local college in agronomy and greenkeeping, and he helps them with their syllabus. And I met with him on the weekend, and he said there's just not that sort of interest that there was when he was coming through. So there's a lot of factors taking place. And what's even worse now is that those that are working, are stretched more than they've ever been stretched, because the activity on golf courses has grown 20%. It's probably settled a little bit post-COVID, but you've got staff trying to do more work with the same number of hours. So it's a challenging time, and I think it's time for superintendents in particular and GMs to look at solutions that are not just about one thing. It's a number of things, and that's another whole podcast. But what we've tried to do at EnvoyGolf is say, well, what can we do to help this thing? And that's where we've come up with this sort of cross-border arbitrage, which we'll get into shortly. But it's across the globe. I had great conversations with Jeff Calderwood about what's happening in Canada as well, and it's very apparent that there's a shortage throughout the world.
No doubt. And Scott, I mean, you're a former club manager, a golf professional, very aware of the industry, very aware of what's going on in the market in North America. And certainly now I know you're involved in recruitment and various different services to help clubs. And so I would assume you kind of echo Dave's thoughts about what you're seeing in this part of the world.
100%, both hemispheres for sure. And it's in all departments of golf. I mean, it's, I'm on the PGA of Canada board right now, and we had some alarming stats of our age demographics and male dominated, not diverse. And that's just a little bit of it. Now you add this extra stress of the labor markets. And I just got off the phone before this one with the general manager in Calgary. He lost 6 of his culinary staff this summer, and good luck replacing culinary staff in the middle of your season. And he's been in a panic just to go through there. And it's also a change of the guard. We have a seasonality thing when it comes to most of Canada's sort of operations throughout the whole year. And in the past, we would have been okay with having, people work for a few months and then leave. And there's so many different options right now, whether it's working with municipalities, working in construction, working throughout. And, the options of just hoping that they'll come back in the spring are just so far few in between, and really a huge challenge throughout. And it doesn't matter what department it is. And now I'm starting to see that it's getting into the next level too. You can't find good associate professionals, can't find good assistants, accountants, everything along the way. So it is a major concern for our industry. And, I don't want to delve much more than what Dave did in all the other areas, but it is a serious issue. And the hard part too is golf and the golf industry. We have a high expectation of the service levels. We are the top end of every, the people that come in our marketplace, our customers are expecting top service, and telling them that we're not open on Mondays or we're closed for breakfast or we're doing these other things is very difficult as a manager to be able to say to our customers or members that we can't facilitate something. So that's a huge challenge.
Yeah, no doubt. I mean, I remember the days when working on a greens crew, you'd be making $3 or $4 more than the average roll that's down the street. And now with the increase of minimum wage, with the wages at construction companies, I mean, you can hold a flag on a street and make $35 an hour. So why would you get up and, rake bunkers in the rain and make 25 if you're lucky? So once again, I mean, we know that this is not unique to our parts of the world, but I learned about EnvoyGolf when I was in Australia, and Dave, I was excited to hear and to learn more about the fact that you've been around for a while and doing this for a while. So maybe you could just share with our listeners a little bit about EnvoyGolf and what it's all about, how it started, where you are active in the world, and a little bit about what it is and how it works.
Okay, so basically EnvoyGolf's mission is to connect skills with needs in the golf industry, both domestically and around the world. So the cross-border program is simply utilizing the hemispheres to help each other. So when it's snowing in Canada or Sweden, it's hot and sunny in Australia, and then come April, when it's cooling down in Australia leading into the autumn, the golf season swings into full gear in the Northern Hemisphere. So it's really cross-border arbitrage. We're not creating more greenkeepers. That's for other industries. But we're hoping for 100 this season to bring in from Sweden, UK, Finland, Canada, to bring into the Aussie hot season. So every golf course in Australia probably brings in between 2 and 4 seasonal staff, because the grass grows through your shoelaces at that time of the year. And, some golf courses in the Northern Hemisphere are closed or certainly have reduced staff. So this idea came, my colleague and the founding director, Mark Matahari, and I used to have conversations about this idea and spitballing ideas, perhaps over a couple of red wines, back in 2018, 2019. And Mark comes from a recruitment background. So he was over in Sweden in 2019, and he met with Jorn Tiersing, the CEO of the Swedish Greenkeepers Association, and they started this first channeling of getting greenkeepers from Sweden into Australia for the Australian summer. And that's how it started. And that was in 2019. So that was sort of the prototype model, and it worked really well. And learned a heck of a lot in the process. Now, what you have to keep in mind is these are young people that but still have some seasonal experience. So we'll talk about the benefits in a few minutes, I'm sure, but the superintendent in Australia is not hiring someone who's never held a rake or never cut a green. So you're getting at least 2 seasons of a young experience. So that's how it started. Then our friend COVID hit with a vengeance. We sort of pivoted then to try to do some work in the domestic market. We went out through social media. We created videos to try to sort of stimulate interest in greenkeeping. We know we're competing with construction and landscaping companies and councils. Anyway, we did bring some in, but the challenge there was that because they had no experience, that the outcomes were marginal, but it worked, and we were trying to just do the best to get bums on seats for golf courses in Australia that were really struggling. So that's how it started. The EnvoyGolf also does some recruitment, some senior management recruitment, but our real original ethos was this cross-border opportunity, hence the word envoy, which means to traverse. So that was our mission. We're hoping this year, we're really excited because we started last year, the borders never opened until December 13th. Well, by the time we could get Swedes over, it was, towards the end of December. They still came over for 3 months. We got it launched again. We had some great success, but this is our first real full season where we're ready. We've got systems in place, the team's in place. We're really excited, and we're really excited now to bring the concept to Canada. We, of course, ultimately want to make this a reciprocal thing. So if you get greenkeepers coming to Australia, we certainly hope that in the opposite season, when the weather turns, that it goes the other way, and that there are Australian greenkeepers helping out golf clubs in Canada and Sweden and Norway and Finland and across the UK.
Well, if my last 2 days of phone coming off the hook with supers asking for that reciprocal treatment. I think you're on to something.
You're on to something.
There are many clubs that are desperate to get qualified staff right now.
Well, I learned in my research prior to my visit to Australia that 10,000 Australians apply for a work permit every year in Canada. And Scott, my joke was that 9,999 of them work at Whistler. but obviously, as you mentioned, Dave, that there has always been a symbiotic kind of relationship for Australians coming to Canada to work in the ski hills, in their summer or winter, et cetera, and vice versa. So this announcement the other day, and Scott with NGCOA Canada, with yourself and Fresh Golf Solutions, maybe just talk a little bit, Scott, about how you got connected and how this kind of came together. Because my understanding is that even with the support of the NGCOA Canada and Jeff Calderwood and Dave, you mentioned this the other day, it came together pretty quickly, which is pretty impressive in the golf industry world.
Yeah, whenever you try to get that many associations, because the Canadian superintendents also are on board, and it definitely took some time. We've been talking for several months, getting everything off the run here, but I think that's the key to relationships. I mean, I met Mark and David back in 2016 when I was recruited for a position down there, and keeping that connection was so natural. They're such great people, and through time. And when I heard about this program in Scandinavia, I kind of questioned David and Mark and said, "Why the heck aren't you looking at Canada?" Our cultural, you've alluded to it already, is that our culture is probably about as close as it gets when it comes to the two countries compared to anywhere else in the world. And natural fit, I think, in a lot of ways, we have some great golf courses on both sides of the borders here, and I think this will be just such a natural go. And when you're talking about getting the associations together, it's so it's not easy, but I think everybody sees that this is a challenge that needs a collaborative approach, and it can't be looked at as two small firms trying to do it. It has to be widespread to try to find a solution to this problem.
And so you mentioned your phone's been ringing, and so what's the kind of comments that you're getting from people that are calling you that saw the announcement that are interested? What's the first thing they say? What's the question?
Well, the first question is, how do they get people back in there to work for them? That's the very first question. I said, well, you got to give to get. But so, and this is really a phased approach, and obviously our winter and their summer is coming up. So that's the very first step, but definitely there's keen interest in it. And, I think all of us realize it's such a natural fit. It's just now putting all the things in together. And it does take time to do all these things. So, time is of the essence here, and getting things going right away, I think, is really important to make sure that these young candidates are going to get the great jobs that are available.
Dave, what's for these young candidates, or candidates of any age, I've no doubt, what are the benefits? Like why would besides the travel the world kind of stuff, which I'm sure is part of it, but what are the benefits to the employee, I guess, with regards to that you guys have experienced in the last couple of years, and that you would be telling someone that's interested?
Well, there are a lot of benefits, and some of them aren't necessarily what you would have first thought. I mean, this is not really an opportunity to go home with a packet of money. What you make in Australia, you'd probably spend, because you've got to live in most cases the big cities or even the regions. It's not cheap. But really, it's an opportunity of a lifetime, James. These opportunities aren't everywhere. You build your skills because you're going to be working under a golf course, but perhaps a different platform with superintendents that'll share their knowledge. You get to enjoy the Australian lifestyle. I mean, a lot of the greenkeepers are finished by 2:30 every day, and they spend their afternoons at Bondi Beach or wherever they like, sometimes the odd pub. They build friendships. They create memories. And they get connected. And these are things that last a lifetime. And so, it really isn't for the faint-hearted. You really have to have an appetite for adventure, but there is such a consolidation of benefits to a young greenkeeper taking on this venture that, and we can see it by the feedback that we get from those that have taken it on. So it's it's really that experience of a lifetime. It's building your skills, building your profile, and probably making friends for life. So it's all of the above.
I mean, James, can you imagine if this program was available for us growing up as a kid, that, when we were young assistant golf pros making our way, and imagine if this type of option was available to us to go work at, the best golf clubs in the world to improve our things, because all three of us have been in a chair and we're looking at resumes. You're always looking for something that stands out. And this would be something that I, as an interviewer, would go, tell me more about this. This would be a great thing. So from improving my skill set, learning from another superintendent that's obviously world class, those things are all benefits. But you're showing that you are not just, I'm ready to take a little time off and do a different industry, do little things. You're committed to the industry and wanting to learn more. I mean, that's, that and the fact that you're going to be able to avoid seeing snow for a year, it's not a terrible thing either.
We'll get back to our conversation in a moment. But first, are you ready to learn from the world's greatest golf and hospitality industry leaders? Train your team and grow your business with a membership to Golf Industry Guru. Join for less than $3 per day and give your entire team access to over 150 hours of courses, podcasts, webinars, templates, articles, live Q&A calls, and more. Free content samples and registration details at golfindustryguru.com.
Well, I agree. I couldn't agree with you more. In my travels, obviously, and for all of us, we get a chance to meet many of the leaders and those that are at the forefront of their area, their expertise, and so often is the case that they have explored the world. They have tried a job for a year in China. They have, gone over here and taken this course. They have kind of sought out kind of mentors to work for and learned, or no matter what it is, they're constantly improving. And I couldn't agree with you more. I mean, when you start to see those upper echelon roles and those upper echelon jobs that get posted, and you see where the final two get down to the process, they're often those individuals that have really widened their scope. You don't know what you don't know, they always say. And so when you get a chance to learn how things are done, especially Dave, when I was in Australia, to the amount of stuff that just I absorbed about what was interesting and different and relevant to that market, that was so unique to that market that I can apply in other parts of the world, was just incredibly beneficial, right? So I could totally see that. From a club standpoint, and Scott, you were saying that some of the phone calls are coming, obviously, from how do I get 6 staff to cut my greens next summer, but I guess it's kind of similar. Would it be, Dave? From the club's benefit, and you said you got to give to get. Share a little bit more about that. Like, can a club, is that kind of the way it is, that if you send someone, you get someone, or can you just be a one-way street, or how does it work?
No, well, we're hoping it's not a one-way street. We really want this to work both ways. But just taking a step back, if you think about a superintendent and what they're looking for, they need seasonal staff, and they need two things. They need them to have some experience, because training seasonal staff, by the time you train them, you've probably just taken 10% of their season. So what we do is make sure that they have at least 2 seasons working at a golf course. So when they come to you, they should be able to hop on a mower. They should be able to take direction easily, maybe even supervise a couple of people on the staff, and take full responsibility. So the superintendents are getting young, often athletic, enthusiastic kids that are really, really keen and have experience. So there's half the battle for them. The other thing that EnvoyGolf does is takes away all the logistics that superintendents get overwhelmed. If I said to a superintendent in Canada, look, or in Australia, I've got a couple of Canadians are keen. The superintendent starts to think, oh, where are they going to live? How am I going to work that? How do I meet them? How do we get that going? How do I advertise? If I'm going to go with the bigger sweep, how are they going to fly? So what Envoy does is we take all of that away from the superintendent. So, helping with their visa, their accommodation, vehicles, insurance, telcos, banks. That's the stuff that we can help the candidates with. And we have systems that allow really efficient ways of using video technology so that they get to meet the candidates. They can have a look at the candidates. The candidates can have a look at the clubs. We do all of that in the background. So there's no surprises, but we take that very heavy logistical piece away from the superintendents. And at the end of it, they go home. So when it becomes cold in Canada, you send them home. And when it becomes cold here in Australia, we send them home. So from a superintendent's perspective, we make it as seamless as possible. And I said, we're not reinventing the wheel here. We're just leveraging off the hemispheres.
Awesome. Scott.
Yeah, just from a Canadian club's perspective, why would I want to send my kids away? And their original thought is, well, they come back. I really look at this as being a retention strategy, and being loyal and committed is a two-way street. You're expecting your staff to be loyal and committed, but you need to help them out too. And I kind of look at it as how good of it is as an employee. If my employer came to me and said, you know what, I think you're great for this program. I think I'd love to nominate you. I want you to advance in this career. And as an employer, to be able to tell a staff member that you really believe in them, that you're seeing them and watching them, I think that has such huge value for them. And that'll be a retention strategy. I mean, I would want to go work for that person again if they believe in me and they can see me and they're doing all these things. To me, it just is a no-brainer. And from that's the commitment. When somebody says, well, I want employees coming here, I said, well, take a step back. How about some of your own that are trying to grow in the industry? And this is a great way to have them grow. Basically, send them off to school for free. Yeah. And they're going to come back with a totally different mindset and be able to be refreshed and as I said earlier, work for some of the greatest superintendents in the world.
So it's a good point, Scott. And that's you'd call that a retention strategy. I also have superintendents that are using as an attraction strategy. I've got some superintendents that when people are interviewing, because it's so hard domestically to get staff, that when they're interviewing, they let them know that program exists. They let them know that there are opportunities to work internationally, even if it's for a season. So it's both the attracting staff and also retention of staff. So, I mean, these are the things where the true value is. We talk about, cutting grass and filling spots, but this becomes part of the club's whole strategy in staff management and attraction and retention. And so, that to me is where golf clubs really benefit. It's the short term having someone cut the grass, but it's a long term to say, are you a club of choice? Mm-hmm. Now, if you're participating in a program like this, you will become a club of choice. We're just going to continue to grow that because we see this as we would like more people to be in greenkeeping full stop. Not just temporary. We'd like people, young lads and girls, to be working at golf clubs instead of landscaping companies, but you got to make it attractive for them. And this is one way to do that.
So you've had a couple goes at it. And I know there's been some kind of clubs and some individuals. So who would be that, Dave, if that shining example of a kind of success story, or what would be, what could you tell us? Or if someone's going to reach out to someone, like what's some of the examples that have been successful?
Well, look, there have been a lot. Two of the candidates actually wanted to stay and ended up working for us at EnvoyGolf. So that showed their enthusiasm. But look, it's seasonal. So some of those people are gone. Some have moved on to convert. We've had two, for example, Mark Parker, the superintendent at New South Wales, had Philippe and Marlena from Sweden. They both liked it so much they wanted to come back. Now we'll talk a little bit about the visas, but they had to go back with their visa because these are 6 to 12 month visas. But we're looking at other ways to get them back through other visa opportunities. It's just they enjoyed it so much and it made so much sense to them. But we can tell by the feedback. If you look at our website, the testimonials, we'd be happy to put anyone who's interested and not quite sure in touch with some of the previous candidates who have experienced it or superintendents who have hired. So there's a lot of them, but keep in mind it's seasonal. So it's a little bit like the ski season. They come and they go. But we have gatherings and we have, we're going to have an orientation this year that's going to get them all to meet each other. So again, that's that personal friendship opportunity. So it's everywhere we look, to be honest. And we're even more excited this year with being able to get them in as early as we can.
You mentioned visa. I mean, I know that I have to, I think, go through a 6-hour interrogation for me to cross the border to get some gas between Canada and the United States. So is it that much more kind of efficient and effective with that partnership with the Commonwealth countries and Canada and Australia and things such as that?
Yeah, so candidates can apply through Australian immigration just through the website for what's called a 417 working holiday maker visa. And it usually lasts 6 months, but post-COVID, it's out to 12 months, which is terrific. And there are other options to extend that if you work in rural Australia, perhaps beyond the scope of this conversation. But the 417 visa, it costs $500, and 90% of the applications are processed within 48 hours. I'm generalizing because it depends if you're a Commonwealth country, but it's not. That's the best model. And that's the one that we're using feverishly at this time. So the processing time is very reasonable. That's a different proposition to sponsorship. So yeah, the 417 working holiday maker visa, that's the grab.
That's great. And Scott, what have you learned and from the Canadian side coming back? Is it similar?
Just in the early phases of looking at that, and I don't know if you saw in the news today that they're backed up by 1.3 million requests and everything else. So, I'm glad we're not trying to do this today because of COVID. Everything, as you've seen in our passport offices, taking 6 to 8 weeks just to get an appointment and everything else. I'm glad we've got time for the backlogs to improve and then get ready for next spring for sure. Because right now, I don't think we would have the same flight.
Well, I think there's two things there, Scott. One is passports, because I know passports here, there's a backlog. I think these visitor visas or temporary working visas is a different process. So we've been researching that as well, and we'll work more with you to make sure that we make that as quick as possible. But our research shows that there's a similar program in Canada, and that would be the one that all the Aussies that work at the ski slopes would be using.
Right. Absolutely.
So finally, I guess, for an individual that is thinking about doing this, so, an individual that's thinking about this winter, maybe, leaving the snow behind and the rain behind and heading down to Australia, what are some of the questions that they should ask themselves or that they should think about whether or not this is the right thing for them? Like those people that have been, I'm sure that the people that have been in the program, Dave, have got some consistencies or some traits that you find that is similar with all the individuals that are interested or with those that want to host someone at their club. What are some of those questions that someone should ask themselves to see if this is the right thing for them?
Well, I think you need an appetite for adventure, James. I don't think this is necessarily for the faint-hearted. You need to be willing to work hard. You've got to step out of your comfort zone. You got to take responsibility for yourself. There's a fair amount of, administering and organization. It's not a money grab. It's about making an opportunity for you to spend some time on the other side of the world and meet people and really stretch yourself. And I think you never, it's like going to the gym. You never really want to do it, but afterwards you go, gee, wasn't that great? And I think I always see that with the candidates and the greenkeepers that come over. They always love it when they finish, although it's never easy at the front end. So it's really for those that want to seek out that adventure. And many don't, but many do.
Yeah, no doubt. What other countries, Dave, do you see partner? Have you got any other conversations going on in partnerships with some other countries that are imminent?
Yes. Well, see, to start with, if we do the seasonal, the cross-border thing, we're working with opposite hemispheres. So, certainly the UK, we're very active there. Sweden, Finland, Norway, Canada. We want to start to do some more with South Africa. And we're trying to put runs on the board to make sure that this works and works really well, and our systems and our people are in place. And then we'll continue to expand outside of that. We will certainly be working with the U.S. clubs, I'm sure, through time, especially the Northeast when it's the weather, in New York is every bit as bad as it is in Toronto. So we're journeying cautiously, but certainly progressively. So we just want to keep making sure we do it really well, and then we'll keep extrapolating into those countries.
For those members, Scott, that are in Canada that are interested, how's the best place for them to reach you and to connect with you?
Yeah, the best spot is just to go to that freshgolf.ca website. It has a lot of the basics of the program, but the beauty of this is I'm happy to talk to them. Whether it's a Zoom call, a phone call, I'll talk with GM supers and eventually, of course, the candidates. But this is something within 24 hours is something where is sort of my standard that I'm going to get back to them and answer questions, because there is going to be questions. It is not a small thing to travel across the world to do something like this. You're going to be away at Christmas. You want to make sure that they're committed to this role. But at the same time, when have we ever talked to somebody that didn't remember fondly of a sabbatical to a place like this? And what a great experience in life. So, but my very first thing is, I would really love to talk to the GMs and superintendents. As much as I'll absolutely take a look at any application that comes through, I would really love the endorsement of a GM or a superintendent. And again, I would say that's a great value for them to be able to say that they're nominating this person to be considered. And I think it's a win-win from that point of view. And I will be reaching out to them anyway, because I want to make sure that whatever candidates we're going to send to David, I want to make sure that we're sending candidates best, and we're not just accepting applications, that we're reviewing them and making sure that we're giving them a great representation of our marketplace, which I know is excellent. We have some great professionals in all departments, but definitely on the grounds crew, we've got some great superintendents out there. So
if you have 10 clubs that are interested in accepting, and you have 20 people that want to go visit down under in Bondi Beach, what is the process for determining who gets selected? Is there what's the process?
Yeah, I'll let Dave maybe follow through from his point of view of what they're going to look at. From my own point of view, I'm going to take the candidates and suggest the candidates that have been recommended the most from my end. But at the same time, some are going to have different skill sets. Some are going to have a horticultural background. Some are going to have some irrigation work that they've done. Some have done some construction. There's lots of different assets to it. And, I'll try my best to give David and their crew the most diverse crowd they've got. And I think when you started, there was only probably 8 or 9 clubs. I think you're well up towards 25. And this program seems to be expanding. So just making sure that we get the best candidates, but also to fill their needs too.
Yeah, we're really excited about we want this to be collaborative. Jeff Calderwood has been fantastic, and he's been very, let's just say he's been measured in his support because he knows the issues. We want to make sure that clubs support this. This isn't about us going out and poaching people from the side. We'd really like the support of superintendents and club owners because we think we can help them and they can help Australian clubs. So it is reciprocal. What I really like about having Scott on board in Canada is that, this is still an industry of relationships. And it's an intimate industry. People know each other. People want to help each other. Nobody's necessarily competing heavily with each other. So to have Scott on the ground helps us dramatically. And he is he's very tuned into what we're looking for. But James, at the end of the day, it'll be the clubs and the candidates that decide who's going to get what job and where. So we will introduce them. We'll do the marriage. We'll bring them to the party, and then they'll get to look at each other. So candidates will go, okay, well, there's 12 clubs in 3 cities. Let me have a look at each of those because the clubs will have a profile. All the superintendents that are hiring will have a look at the candidates. They'll have a little a video of themselves and their CV and talk about what they've been up to. So in the end of the day, it's up to the clubs and the greenkeepers. But we try to create the opportunity for them to meet and to make it happen.
Wonderful. Love it. Gentlemen, that's fantastic. It's so exciting. What else, anything else you want to tell our listeners about this wonderful partnership and this great initiative to help clubs fill a very important need in the labor shortage crisis that we're under?
I think you've got, it's the one thing that you think of that has a win-win-win situation for everybody involved. And that's such a great perk. Like, David just said, we're not looking to poach. This is meant to be a benefit to the industry completely. So I'm sure he'll have something to add to that. But, not very often you can get involved with something. And, I would like to get back to the industry. This has the potential of giving back, if we can find some great ways to keep some great stars and not lose them in the industry to construction and other things. So this is truly a great program for the golf industry itself.
Awesome. Dave.
Well, James, I tend to try to get back to Canada once a year, and I can tell you it's usually in July when it's warm. So I've been dodging snow for 24 years, and I've taken it to extremes and created the opportunity for fellow Canadians to do the same. And I tell you what, it's not a bad opportunity to be spending your afternoons on the beaches in Australia. But really, we're proud of this. We think it's going to work. We are starting softly because we understand their issues. We want there to be, momentum. We want them to be confidence. We've got a lot of people who are helping with this, and we're excited about it. And we really think that it's our way to utilize staff around the world by off-season arbitrage, and it really can't. It is a win-win, and we're really excited about it. So if anyone wants to contact us, obviously EnvoyGolf.com. You'll see all our contacts. We're a team of about 5. We're happy to help. Scott's on the ground in Canada. Just touch base with us, and if there's any questions, we're happy to help out and walk anybody through it.
Love it. Well, thank you, gentlemen. I appreciate us bringing everyone together in these multiple time zones, and thank you so much, both of you, for your efforts, and I wish you all the best with it going forward. And thank you to Gig Nation for listening to today's podcast. And as always, if you want to learn more, just visit us on the inside at golfindustryguru.com. So that's it for today. We'll be back again soon with our next one. And thanks for listening, and see you on the inside.
Thanks for listening to the Gig Podcast. We hope you enjoyed this episode, and mostly that you learned a few things that will help you improve your business. Join us next time as we continue to bring you the best and brightest golf and hospitality leaders on the planet. Thanks for listening.